Shall I?
Yes.
Yeah. The first question is education. Education is the first place where can help students reach their true potential. And this way, the potential means the stored might that every student has. For example, if you look at most visions of schools in Botswana, it's mainly to produce a student who will contribute to both social and technological development. Given the picture, do you think that education is achieving or cultivating this potential?
Thank you so much for this question. I think it's a very great topic to discuss. And I believe that, yes, education does cultivate students' potential because students come from different backgrounds. Some students come from wealthy families that have been exposed to a lot of things, exposed to fishing because their parents go out to fish, exposed to going to hotels because their parents travel. And that is not the case for their counterparts, other students their age, because some students come from less fortunate families that don't get chances to fly around or visit game parks or go to bookstores or do other things because of where they're raised. So because of socialization, because of how we were raised, we're not exposed to things and experiences that other students experience. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. That only means we get exposed to new things or we learn new things later than our friends. So when you bring education into the equation, education brings both students, brings all students from all these backgrounds and gives them a platform for learning. And this platform helps the students gain new knowledge, whether it's based on their prior knowledge or it's completely new knowledge from new knowledge which is different than what they've ever learned about. So education in that way becomes a vehicle, becomes that power that empowers students to reach their goals and learn about things that they never thought they would learn about while with their peers. So in a nutshell,
Yes.
education does cultivate the potential because sometimes a student wouldn't have known that they're good at basketball until they play basketball, right? So in that way, their capacity to learn, their talent is nurtured, and their potential is nurtured as well. So yes,
it's nurtured. Yes. Thank you, sir. Wonderful answer. And that okay, so I say when you start going to school, the first question that your teacher asks you is what you want to be when you grow up. And that's what's your career, right? And totally that's what it's all about, helping you become that when you grow up. And when you start to look at the world today, we have these people doing the jobs which they don't like. It's sort of like they're incarcerated in those careers. So don't you think it would be better if teachers would help kids find that gift at a young age and build it into a career? Also, given that the majority of students of graduate aren't employed, after you graduate, you sit down and next thing there's no unemployment, and you just sit down with those degrees, blah, blah, blah. So why don't the teachers start helping the kids become the job instead of waiting for them to go and look for the job?
I do agree that it is important for students to work in a job or in a capacity that they really want to, they dreamt to be working in, instead of just going out to hunt for a job which they can do, but they're not necessarily passionate for it, passionate about it.
Yes, sir.
So in terms of teachers, I think teachers can do the most for students by exposing them to different occupations when they are in the classroom. For example, if a teacher is talking about quadratic equations, right, they can talk about where quadratic equations are going to be used, statistics, math, what do mathematicians do, what do economists do, and what do maybe business owners or people working in finance do with equations in the classroom. So I think teachers have the power and have the capacity to do that. And if I could share if I could share my story of growing up, I've always wanted to be a teacher because my third grade teacher was the best teacher ever, and she talked to me about teaching and other occupations as well. But I really wanted to be a teacher because I was exposed to how she was teaching. She was sharing about her life as a teacher, which really interested me in it. And I grew up as well in primary school. I started doing science courses and started learning about doctors and cardiologists and all that, because my teachers were talking about all these different people that you can be, all these different players that you can be when you're older. So this expanded my outreach, expanded my thinking, saying, hey, I really want to be a doctor. And going to Marapula School, I was introduced to engineering, actuary, biomedical engineering. Because of that, I was also interested in exploring more from just being a doctor. So I was like, I want to be a biomedical engineer, right? And then I went to Hotchkiss, I went to Rhodes, I did business, and I learned that, hey, all this time I was volunteering in the community where my schools are based, teaching and motivating people and mentoring people. So I'm actually an educator. So, I can actually make more impact across all these different disciplines by being an educator. So right now, I just graduated from Johns Hopkins with master's in teaching, and now I have a doctorate. I'm getting a doctorate in education in New York City, in St. John's. So thank you. So I'm very humbled and very thankful for that experience I had with my teachers who helped me explore different avenues and helped me realize my talents and my passions. And I wish that for every student who ever steps inside a school building.
Great. From what you just said, what you're trying to say is that as a teacher, you should actually try to motivate your students. Because it would be awkward for a teacher, for example, if a science teacher, you just come and you teach science and then you're done and then you just go. So from what you're saying, actually think that teachers should be a little bit more involved in their students' life. They should do career exploration and all that stuff to try and motivate their students. So that's actually a good point.
Yes, very well.
Hello? Okay, let me continue with the next question. Sorry about that. So I was saying, I don't know about that side, but here in Botswana, we have certain schools in which the students are really performing badly. You talk about academic performance, it's bad. You talk about behavior, it's bad. Indisciplined, notorious students, hooliganism, etc. So when you start to observe all these challenges, you start to realize that these really aren't problems, they are just results. Because most of the children are raised in such environments where education really isn't taken seriously. For example, you wake up in the morning and kids are playing from 6 o'clock in the morning up to 9 o'clock in the night. And then you start to think that when do these kids get time to read? And they're doing that from a young age. Just imagine when they grow up, they just grow up with that total belief system. And obviously, they're not going to take education seriously when they grow up. So when they get to school, teachers spend a lot of time reprimanding them, punishing them, corporal punishment, detention, etc. But if you observe this doesn't really of the students to change. It just makes them even more indisciplined. So what do you think would be the best approach as a teacher? Because this whole problem stretches way back into the families, into the society. So what would you think the best approach would be?
Yes, so if I could understand you better, are you asking me what's the best way to guide students' behavior in terms of motivation or maybe punishment, correct?
Yes, sir. I was actually saying that nowadays students engage in antisocial behaviors. So long story cut short, I was saying that teachers spend too much energy punishing them using corporal punishment, detention, suspension, and all that. But really, that isn't solving the problem. The problem here is that these children have been socialized in such a way that they do not actually take education seriously. So as a teacher, I was asking you, what would you think the best approach is?
Right, thank you. That's another good question. I do agree that students have been socialized into these avenues, and when they get to school, they would flip out, they would disrespect, they would not comply, and they will do all sorts of things that are not moral or accepted in the classroom. And this is because of many reasons. Some students misbehave in classrooms, in my experience, because their friends are misbehaving. So the student will be just fine at home and with parents, but because friends are coming in, peer pressure, they just follow suit. Another reason for another reason for bad behaviors can be because of family background. Maybe the student is being bullied for their background and they want to fight back. Or maybe the student has psychological issues or emotional issues, emotional challenges really relating to how they were raised or the people around them, or just basically their upbringing, right? So there's so many reasons why students misbehave, but as you mentioned, in Botswana, there are very few options for punishment, right? You get beaten, you get maybe suspended or expelled, and that's not really showing to be fruitful, right? So even considering research, a lot of research in the USA shows that corporal punishment is not very effective because students don't necessarily build an understanding or a moral or a value system just from being punished or being exposed to pain. So that becomes a non-factor in changing their behaviors. So my remedy, my suggestion for the change in Botswana would be to adopt something very similar to the United States, where students are taught values when they're very young. They're taught values not just at home, but in the classroom. So when you begin the class at the very beginning of the school year, you have classroom rules, you have what we call community circles, where students with the teacher set up rules for behavior, rules for helping each other, and rules for respecting each other, and basically cementing a common agreed statute of behaviors and expectations that would guide the classroom and the class and the school for the rest of the year. So this helps rules and values become a shared common asset for the classroom, that I made these rules, I have to follow these rules. I made these rules, I needed help, and my friends, my classmates obeyed these rules, and we are helping each other. I'm benefiting from these rules. I'm not excluded from these rules. A challenge with doing this in Botswana would be that maybe teachers are not trained to do community circles, and maybe some students are on the highest degree of misbehavior that they can't even get to sitting down and talking about feelings and agreeing with other students. However, this could be tackled, this could be approached systematically by the head teachers, by the principals, and by the Ministry of Education, where students get trained, teachers get trained, and school leaderships get trained to form what we call value systems for students instead of just corporal punishment. So in that way, students have and own, students build, create, and own those value systems, those sets of values that they can uphold in the classroom and in small relationships between each other. So that is my approach, and I've seen it work. I've seen it working here in the United States, and I really, really wish that we could adopt that for Botswana.
Okay, one of the last questions is, so oftentimes I realize that in the United States, like they'll be about 15 years old or 16 years old, and like they are just intelligent, they're involved in the science semesters, and they are making these projects that are so wow. So according to my observation, I realized that maybe the reason why kids in Botswana aren't that advanced is because we actually take a wrong root system. For example, when you go to, you're taught a lot of subjects like RE, ME, GNT, and maybe you really aren't interested in that stuff, and you end up, failing. So, what do you think about this idea of allocating subjects to students according to the career that they want to do when they grow up?
Yes, thank you. That's a very challenging question, because you're talking about allocating students or giving students a chance to study according to the career that they think they want to pursue at a very young age. And just to get you correctly, you said 15 and 14, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, and that's in grade 8 and 9, I guess. 8, 9, 10.
Mhm.
Right. So I would agree with, exposing students first to so many different avenues of education. So before they can even choose, because I think that students at that age, especially in Botswana, have not had the exposure like other students in other countries, like students in other countries. So I do think that students should be given the opportunity first to explore these different avenues, and then develop some interest in them before choosing them, instead of expecting them to already know and giving them a short period of time to choose. So yes, that helps us make informed decisions as young students, because when you take DNT and you're going to take it for 3 years, that's a whole lot of years in your education, when you could have done something else if you were exposed to it and it matched to your passions.
Yes, okay, that's a great answer. So, fortunately or unfortunately, that's the end of our interview. Because basically, what I wanted to know is, how do you approach the issue of socialization? That was the main thing that I wanted to know, and I think I really got my answer. I really did.
Thank you so much for this interview, and I'm looking forward to more.
More is coming up.